Hey, Luke. Do you like Killers of the Flower Moon, the movie?
Yeah, I mean, I went to see it in theaters, and
Oh,
you know,
cool.
yeah,
That's so cultured of you. That's so woke.
yeah, and I watched it, and yeah, I think I enjoyed it rather a lot, Michael.
Ah, well, would you say that you really liked the scene of Robert De Niro's character wearing sunglasses?
Oh yeah, that was the best scene.
Well, what if I told you that that Paramount has gotten some hot water because after somebody tweeted out that image, they replied with, "You know, he had to do it to him."
Wait. So Paramount Pictures replied to an image of Robert De Niro, the racist murderer in the movie Killers of the Flower Moon, wearing sunglasses, replying to that picture. He had to do it to them, and what he was doing in that movie was committing a genocide against Native Americans.
And it almost makes you think maybe these companies shouldn't be trying to do memes, but no, they should actually because it's funny. So well done.
Yeah, no, like normally when companies like brands try these, like memes, you had to do it to them. Of course, it's cringy. It's all very cringy all the time. Unless they fuck up, then it makes it all worth it, honestly. Because it's just so funny. Like racist murder Robert De Niro. You had to do it. Sorry, he had to do it to him. Yeah, wonderful stuff. Keep it up, Paramount.
Hello and welcome to Select and Reflect, the movie review podcast where we look at films that have come out in the near and distant past. We give them a couple of watches and evaluate them beyond first impressions. I'm your host Michael, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Luke. And this week we are celebrating the 25-year anniversary of the movie American History X. So Luke, why don't you tell us a thing or two about American History X?
Sure thing, Michael. I'm just wondering, when this movie was released, of course, if Twitter was around, do you think New Line Cinema to...
Oh god, yeah. He had to do it to him.
Yeah, when Edward Norton is working out with his Nazi tattoo on full display, New Line Cinema would tweet, we had to do it to him, And that would be great. Sadly, Twitter wasn't around back in 1990.
Otherwise, they would have.
Yeah, 1998 didn't have any Twitter. Did it have any social media? Like MySpace wasn't even invented back then, right?
There was nothing to go off.
Shitty internet forums. Where this guy, Edward Norton's character, would spend a lot of his time, I think. But anyway, American History X is a 1998 American crime drama directed by Tony Kaye, not Tony Gay. In his feature directorial debut, the movie stars Edward Norton, Edward Furlong. You can tell they're brothers because they've got the same first name.
That's it. Yeah, that's how they do it in the Edward family.
Yes, Fairuza Balk. I believe it was she was Vicky Valancourt, wasn't she? In that Adam Sandler movie, The Waterboy.
Oh yeah, I could see that. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So it's funny. She plays like the same kind of like character, like an aggressive, like female who is the main character's love interest in some capacity. But in one movie, she's just this
kind of like innocent, like happy-go-lucky.
Well, this lovable Louisiana, kind of a criminal. And in this movie, she's just a neo-Nazi, even though like the characters aren't that different in how she's playing them. Anyway, we also have Stacy Keach, Elliot Gould, Avery Brooks, and Beverly D'Angelo. The movie was released on October the 30th, 1998, a day before Halloween. In 1998.
Oh, spooky.
Yeah, I know, spooky. So we are kind of close to its 25-year anniversary. And Michael, can you tell me what the budget was for American History X?
15 million.
Well, your guess of 15 million, Michael, wasn't too bad because it's actually 20.
Well done me. I'm a hero.
Not a bad guess. But what about the box office? How much did this make?
Oh god. I'm not sure actually. Let's say this movie made 35 million. That's weird. That's a weird guess, and it's wrong. But that's how much it made.
It is wrong.
Okay.
Because it's actually only 23.
Oh, I felt like such an idiot.
Yeah.
But it's okay.
It's 23.9, so I guess 24 if you want to round it up.
Oh, okay, I do want to round it up.
Yeah, so you're a bit closer. So overall, I think this movie, again, isn't, it's not a successful movie, but it's a memorable movie, I think.
Yes.
And that is why we are reviewing it, 25 years since it came out. And, there are other movies from 1998, which are more popular, which we haven't reviewed. But this is, I think not a significant movie, but an interesting movie. And again, I remember watching this, when I was a lot younger. And
When
I think
you were a young racist.
yeah, when I was a young racist, and this really turned me away from all that Nazi shit, which I don't believe in anymore. And that's why I went to see the Marvels at the weekend.
Good.
Yeah, no.
That's woke of you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so Michael, tell me, did you like American History X?
Well, I did like it. I think one thing that is hard not to think about this movie is that I don't know if it really has anything fantastically insightful to say about racism. There's a temptation with any movie that deals with race, especially, kind of like, you can, I think, make a lot of the standard criticisms of like a movie about race to some extent. Like, this is obviously a story about where the main focus is this white guy's relationship to racism and how it affected him and all that kind of stuff, which is not something, I don't like to completely politicize the joy out of movies, but I think it is something that is worth talking about. Overall, though, I think even if you get rid of that, you'd be left saying the movie is like the characters are fine, or like the acting's good, the characters are realistic, but I don't think this is like a top shelf movie, and I don't think there's anything massively about it. I'm like, yes, awesome, but I did like it. It's not got that top shelf movie energy for me. But what did you think?
Yeah, I mean, you say it doesn't have really much of an insightful. It's not like looking at race in an interesting way, or this is how racism develops. No, it's not really clever in that respect. I think it's just like a genuine story of how something like this would happen, like how someone would be racist.
Yeah.
Like how does this happen? How does somebody become a neo-Nazi? And this, again, I think obviously things are different today in the modern era. In like since Donald Trump became president, essentially, there have been race relations in America, and indeed over here in this country, for other reasons. Things have been quite tumultuous. And if you want to go back even further, since the recession of 2008, so what I'm looking at here is, okay, this is how somebody could have become like a racist in the 1990s,
when everything was great. That's
Yeah.
the question we need answering. Like, how could I can understand someone being a racist now, but in the 1990s, everything was wonderful. What were they even playing at?
The thing is, the core thing is still the same, whatever era you live in. It's like this underlying feeling of anger, and you're pissed off at the world. And of course, just how you get to that is different, compared to now the modern day. Like, if you were to tell the story in the modern day, you'd have to bring up like YouTube, watching YouTube videos or whatever. Because that's the thing that what happens.
It would start with PewDiePie.
It would start with PewDiePie. Yeah. The thing is that nowadays, how would a kid become a Nazi? Well, they'd like see recommendations in their YouTube. Subbox, or not Subbox, I guess, because they wouldn't have subscribed to these channels first, but they would have seen recommendations on YouTube for certain like right-wing YouTube channels, and then they'd click on them and these guys are making interesting points, they're young and impressionable, and you'd go down that path. And now, of course, in the 90s, YouTube didn't exist, so how does somebody become a Nazi? Well, the idea that this movie is I guess advocating for is that it's learned, like the families pass it down. There is a racism that exists, and then it kind of develops, and racism is learned. And of course, that is the case still. Like, racism is learned, of course. Like, nobody is born a racist, but it's just like nowadays it's not as relevant, this particular story, because it's not like the father saying like racist stuff at the dinner table. It's like the kid, going off and listening to some racist shit on YouTube, or seeing some stuff on Reddit or whatever.
Nowadays, it's so much easier to be a racist. There's just so many more options.
No,
truly, it's fantastic.
Well, that's the case, and there's the head neo-Nazi Cameron. He has this interesting line in the movie where he says, "We can now organize a lot better because of the internet."
Yes, that was, so what did they say? It was prophetic, I guess.
Yes, prophetic. Like, he's talking about, these groups can organize now because of the internet, but he didn't make the next. Of course, it hadn't happened yet, so I wouldn't expect the script to acknowledge this, because then you're predicting the future. He didn't make the next step, which is, hey, and now we can recruit people on the internet as well.
Yeah.
Like, okay, it's gone from just organizing these groups. Now we can recruit people on the internet, and of course, the internet, you can recruit anyone anywhere. The underlying message of the movie is still correct, which is like racism is something that is learned. Like, obviously, like hate is something that is taught, etc., etc. It's just done in a different way. And also, why are people willing to accept hate or accept racism, accept these racist ideas as like truth? It's because they are like annoyed or angry at something. yeah, I mean, you saw so a bunch of racist people show up to defend this cenotaph, and what a surprise! They're all pissed off and looking for a fight. Oh, who who could
Yeah.
have predicted that? And because it's the same thing that existed back in the 90s and exists now and exists and will exist in the future. These people are pissed off. So that's the thing. This movie, I'm not saying it's like irrelevant. I guess just some of what the story is less relevant, but its message is still relevant. Do you get what I'm saying?
I do, yeah. And you're right. Yeah, no objection to the reality that you're right. And I do think there is, yeah, I think there's an accuracy to this movie. But yeah, I guess what I would say, in terms of thinking it's not necessarily insightful, is that I think pretty much you could infer that the reason why people become racist is because they're exposed to racist ideas. So it's not to knock the movie, but it's just say, as a kind of, I guess, emotional and character-based exploration of that, I think it is interesting. And I don't think this movie has like nothing to say about racism, but it's just kind of interesting that it doesn't have like necessarily the hugest amount to say.
Yeah, I don't think, again, this is a separate issue in terms of, is it insightful? Is it telling us anything new about racism? And again, I would say the movie is not that insightful. You are correct. It's, again, like I said before at the start, it's just a story. And so it doesn't need to be insightful. It doesn't need to be deep. And I don't think it really is that deep. But, it's still interesting. Like, it's not, just because it isn't insightful, it doesn't mean, you can't, watch and appreciate some elements of it. Although there are some parts which should definitely be more insightful and just fall below that threshold, which I would consider like, necessary for a movie which is this serious. And we'll get into that. I'll tell you right off the bat, actually, like how Edward Norton de-radicalizes himself, how he goes from
I was thinking that like they kind of rush it.
Yeah, well, maybe they rush it. I'm not sure, but I just don't think it's a very realistic path. I think it is realistic in terms of how he becomes a Nazi. That's realistic. I can see that happening. Again, it's not insightful, and it's not that relevant to today. But it is, a story which and a message which it's still relevant. But how he then de-radicalizes, I don't think that is realistic, and I'll get into why. That is the case. But anyway, Michael, let us get into this movie. How many nitpicks do you have?
I don't have any, or any lit picks.
No. Well, actually, I don't have any nitpicks, but I do have a lit pick. Can you guess what that is?
Is it lit pick. Is it that you think that the aesthetic of like the swastika with like the red and like the black and the white is actually quite objectively aesthetically pleasing?
Well, do you think that?
I kind of do. Like, I'm not saying, like, all I'm saying, I think it's a bad thing, but I'm just saying, like, if, like, if you ever seen, like, the rallies, I think it's, like, the bright red with, like, the white and the black. It's very striking.
Yeah.
And I wish I could use a red and a white and a black in combination like that.
So, wait, you like the colours red, white, and black?
Yeah.
You know what's funny? Of course, that's Man United's kit colours.
It's true, yeah.
Their home kit, red shirt, white shorts.
Man, you are racist.
Black socks. Hey, we're not racist. Come on. No, that's Liverpool and Chelsea.
So I don't know what your lit pick would be, actually.
Well, I like Star Trek, right?
Oh, yeah.
So there's a character in this movie who has a prominent role in a Star Trek TV series, of course.
Oh, yeah, hold on. I think I know. So is it the teacher?
Yeah, the actor.
Black teacher.
Yes.
Yeah, because he's I know I know of who he is, or like if you like, I could find a way. I know who you're talking about. I don't know his name. Does he wear a yellow shirt?
What in Star Trek?
Yeah,
no.
Maybe I could just be wrong about that, but yeah, black guy. Is it in the Next Generation?
No.
Okay, well, I think I know who it is. No, it's not. So sorry, I'm not thinking of the guy who wears the visor. I think I know who it is, but what's his name? What's the name of the Star Trek character?
Thank God you're not thinking of the guy who wears the visor, Geordie LaForge, played by LeVar Burton.
Although I wouldn't consider it racist, to be honest, because you can't see as much of his face.
Okay, well, I would still consider it racist, because this guy is a prominent character in another Star Trek TV series.
God, like, I'm sure that I will recognize him when I see him, because I've seen, like, the main characters, I think, from most Star Trek series.
Well, it's Deep Space Nine, and he is the captain. And of course, his name is Captain Benjamin Sisko, played by Avery Brooks, who is Dr. Sweeney, the black professor or the black teacher.
Yes, I do recognize him. So I didn't know he was from Deep Space Nine, or that he wore that frankly quite comfortable looking jumper affair.
Yes. The thing is, I have been watching a lot of Deep Space Nine recently, and yeah, I just made it onto season 6, and then look at who appears in this movie I'm reviewing. Avery Brooks, who's the the bold, courageous Captain Sisko in Deep Space Nine. But yeah, that's fun. That was a nice surprise. I hope you agree, Michael.
No, yeah, good.
Yeah.
And obviously in Star Trek, racism doesn't exist anymore because Gene Roddenberry was a communist.
There's actually a very good episode on racism and science fiction in general, where so he as Captain Sisko has a brain, some science fiction thing that goes wrong with his brain, whatever, it doesn't matter. And basically he's transported back to the 1950s, I believe, and he is this black guy who lives, in the 50s, and he's a writer, but he's racially discriminated against, of course. And the thing is, he writes these stories, okay, because he works for a science fiction magazine, they write interesting stories about science fiction stuff. He writes a story about how there's this black captain of a spaceship or a space station called Deep Space Nine, and it's an incredible story.
Writers sucking their own dicks.
Well, I don't. He's not sucking his own dick because he didn't write the show.
Oh yeah, okay. No, well, I mean, sorry, but the writers wrote him, so the writers wrote him writing a story about them that's really good. This is very different from the episode of Supernatural where there's a guy who's writing Supernatural.
Okay, but the point is that the script has to be really good. It has to be an incredible script because all of the other writers are like, wow, this is a great script, Benjamin. You've done a great job here. But the
you're a credit to your race.
Yeah, but the thing is,
I want to say that to someone just one day, just in a genuine conversation. I'll just go, you're a credit to your race.
Yeah, but the thing is, his story won't get published because the captain is black. The captain is black, and this is the 1950s, and the readers apparently won't like it if the captain of this space station is black, and it's just so, of course, the contradiction is laid out. It's you're writing all these incredible stories about incredible science fiction stuff like aliens and robots and space stations,
but a black guy being
a black guy being a captain, well, that's too far. And that again was the point of the episode is how science fiction can help us see a future where things are possible. It can be science fiction can be really positive for us. It's not just entertaining stories. It can really help with the seeing where we could be in the future. And yeah, that is it's a very deep episode which I can't really convey without watching it again. And obviously anyone should watch it and should watch Deep Space Nine in general. But yeah, that we have really got sidetracked here, haven't we?
Yeah, we kind of did. Yeah, people are going to be like, oh, so you don't have anything to say about American History X then?
Yeah, no, sorry, it's just Deep Space Nine. Just it might even be better than The Next Generation, Michael. But anyway, let's get into the plot of of American History X. So the film stars two brothers from LA who are involved in the white power skinhead and neo-Nazi movements. The older brother, played by Edward...
Sorry, can we not use the word Nazi just to describe somebody who we disagree with?
Good point. I'm sorry. Independent thinker.
Thank you.
Yes, independent thinker Edward Norton serves 3 years in prison for voluntary manslaughter and is rehabilitated during this time, and then tries to prevent his brother from being indoctrinated further. So yeah, we get a lesson in how racism perpetuates itself, a realistic look at how people get drawn into believing racist things, and I guess that people can be de-radicalized as well. That is possible, but again, I don't really like how that is shown. I don't think that is realistic, and yeah. Again, it's not trying to be insightful, like we've said. It's just
I think this movie actually could do with a bit of cynicism, because have I ever told you my idea for a great movie? I'll very basically, the problem is I can never actually make it because it's mostly just stolen from other things. It's pretty much, in simple terms, This Is England crossed with Taxi Driver, and much like how Taxi Driver ends rather cynically, with obviously Travis not really overcoming his murderous psychotic rage, the whole point of the movie would basically be that, you can't really de-radicalize anybody. And I think, a bit of cynicism is always nice. And yeah, the lack of cynicism in being like, oh no, actually, they just have some, this guy has a nice conversation with a black person and he tells his brother about it, and then he gets bummed by some white dudes in prison, and suddenly he's not racist anymore.
Yeah, it'd be funny if he stopped being racist because he was like, wow, I didn't know Nazis were gay.
I was for a minute I was thinking you were going to say he stopped being racist because he realized that like white guys can have big dicks, so it's like it like challenged racial stereotypes.
But yeah, maybe that as well. But yeah, you say this movie lacks cynicism, and I agree. I think that's because at heart this movie is really quite a liberal movie.
Yeah, it is.
Because the end goes super liberal. It's like fucking, like the most liberal shit you can imagine. It's just devoid of like any like socio-political commentary or socio-economic commentary, I think would be the better term. Because yeah, it just basically says, hey, hatred is baggage. No one should hate anyone. Why are we all hating each other, etc.?
Yeah.
And
it's
just,
like, yeah, it's very much just also like the quote at the end. I didn't bother to read it, or I didn't bother to look it up, but I'm guaranteeing that's a Martin Luther King quote.
No, it's from Abraham Lincoln.
Oh, is it? Okay. Well, that's even worse.
That's even more
good,
liberal.
Yeah.
It's even more, not even a black guy, a white guy who eventually freed the slaves.
Yeah.
Obviously, I understand. Lincoln, I don't think was a bad guy in terms of history. Like, there are some liberal heroes who, okay, you deserve to be a hero. I guess Lincoln can be one of those guys.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the thing. Martin Luther King, of course, he gave these flowery speeches, which again liberals would, I guess say.
Yeah, he wore a suit.
Well, that's how you do it. That's how you do it. But of course, MLK was a communist who, believed in eradicating poverty and as one of the keys to restoring, black people's, black people. Well, I say restoring. They never had it.
Empowerment.
They never had it in the first place, right? They've never had a fair shake in America, and that eliminating poverty would be massively beneficial to them. And so if there are structural issues, and it's not just a case of don't hate people. Like there are structural issues to why racism exists, and poverty is one of those reasons, which again is kind of brought up at one point in that dinner conversation with Elliot Gold.
Yes.
But yeah, it's like the movie really doesn't focus on that at all. That's not really where the movie wants to focus, and at the end it just completely like throws that away, and it's just like, no, we should love each other and don't hate. Well, we'll get onto that at the end of the movie, I guess.
Yes.
So the inspiration for the story, by the way, came from the punk rock scene of the screenwriter David McKenna's childhood.
Yeah.
Where he often witnessed violent behaviour. He said, I saw a lot of bigotry growing up, and it made me think about writing something about the world of hate mongers. The point I try to make in the script is that a person is not born a racist. It is learned through the environment and the people that surround you. And I think in the modern day, through like the internet, that has to be added on as well. The question that intrigued me is, why do people hate, and how does one go about changing that? My premise was that hate starts in the family. And I guess that's true to some extent. I would say like the actual hatred starts with you being, pissed off. And that doesn't necessarily have to be with your family, but your family can direct that hate in a racist way. But yeah, and I guess this is how shit happened back in the day. This is again, it's like you are racist because of the people who you grow up with. You're racist because you're young and impressionable, and you of course you try to understand the world. And if people who are your authority figures or just explain things to you, then okay, you're going to take it on board. Again, it's not that insightful. It's just kind of an interesting look at like this particular like family.
It is interesting, the whole like punk thing, because that does relate to like the idea that it's almost like the anger comes first. And yeah, obviously there was a thing with like punk where you had some people, like the Dead Kennedys going down the kind of communist route with their classic song Nazi punks fuck off. But then you also had the people who are like, yeah, no, we're going to be punky and it's going to be like racist. But that would make sense in terms of someone who's just happy with their life. They might be a Nazi, but only in like the kind of not in the interesting way where they go around smashing up shops and stuff. But yeah, I think that makes sense as an explanation for where this story came from, and I think that works best in terms of it being this kind of character thing where it's about, it's more about what happens, kind of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think exactly. It's just like what happens. Like it's an interesting look at this character, rather than again an insightful look at things. And yeah, it's true. Like we all know this, especially nowadays. Like if you're happy, you're probably not going to be a Nazi. And unless you're like an upper class Nazi,
yeah, that's it,
yeah, and those people of course exist, but like in terms of a Nazi like thug, I don't think you get to be that unless like you've got some real issues in your life. people who fall into this trap of being radicalized, who go down the rabbit hole, are often like unemployed, etc., or like, not living in, in great conditions, whatever. Like it's quite obvious, and we all know this, and it's why like recessions and stuff are not good for like racial like harmony, because somebody, so all of a sudden people are getting blamed because there aren't enough jobs to go around, etc. Anyway, let's talk about the script, Michael. So, high school student Danny Vinyard antagonizes his Jewish history teacher Murray by choosing to write a civil rights essay on Mein Kampf. As a result, African-American principal and outreach worker Dr. Bob Sweeney gives Danny an ultimatum: study history directly under him through current events, which he calls American History X, or be expelled. I really don't like how he goes American History X. Like, you really make... Like, okay, we get it. That's the title of the movie. You didn't need to emphasize the X.
Yeah, what are we? Some kind of American History X squad? What I found interesting about it, just right here, is that it's interesting that the movie actually has very little to do with this whole American History X course. Because, like, logically, you would watch this, and I feel like you'd be like, okay, so this is going to be about the relationship between the kid and this teacher, and the kid's going to, like, talk about American history, and obviously you would hope it wouldn't be like super preachy, but in some way they're going to explore American history and American culture, and have a systemic criticism of racism. And it's kind of funny the way the movie like obviously completely eschews that by having it so it's like, no, your first course in American History X is going to be to learn about this specific person. So it's almost like the movie's really rubbing your face in that moment, in the fact it's like, this is not going to be about the systemic societal causes of racism, really, in the way that like American History X, like if you studied American history, it's going to be about this individual personal journey in relation to racism. Yeah, no, that is a good point. Yeah, again, there is no discussion of the current events because, of course, like he dies the next day. Does the younger brother, what's he called? Danny. That's right. It's so shit. Their names both begin with D. That is lazy white people. What are you doing, man? And of course, both the actors' first names start with Edie and then Edward. That was the main character of the movie we reviewed last week. That's crazy. Edward. So at least I wasn't a Jacob. At least, yeah. So yeah, again, this American History X thing, it's just, like, it's crazy again how fast. I mean, the movie focuses on Derek's de-radicalization, but Daniel, the younger brother, he kind of, in writing this paper, kind of like gets to the bottom of like why he's racist, quite quickly, just by writing one paper. And I guess his brother tells him the story as well about what happened to him in prison and everything, and that helps, I guess. But yeah, I'll say in general it's an intriguing start, because we've got to look at this from the perspective of we don't know what's happening, right? Because this guy who he's a proud Nazi, he has a little brother who is following in his path. The head teacher doesn't want to give up on him. That's interesting. Then we of course see fully who his brother is, because Ed Norton has a massive Nazi tattoo, and we have a basketball scene, and I don't know why it's weird that Ed Norton's so good at basketball. Yeah, I was thinking that obviously, I mean, personally, most white people I know who are good at basketball are pretty racist, but I thought that was the exception. Well, I'm not good at basketball. Oh, no. Good. No, but the thing is, he should play. I don't know. Like, if you were a racist, I doubt you'd play basketball. Like, I think you'd want to play like football or baseball, not like a black sport. I don't know. That's the impression I get. Yeah, I was thinking that. Like, it does seem a bit weird. I mean, but maybe at some point, maybe that indicates his true feelings, though. Oh yeah, that's it. Yeah. Yeah, about how like he's not actually racist. Like that was a learned racism. He loved basketball when he was a kid. He loved competing, and that. So yeah, again, that's his true self coming out. And indeed, when he plays basketball in prison, that's a sign of him like de-radicalizing. So there you go. Yeah, I was gonna say like, and I don't know where we can mention this now. Maybe I'll just set it up now. The whole like fact that this movie like kind of makes the racist character look pretty cool. A lot of people who are actually Nazis really like this movie. Does it make him look that cool, though? I don't know. I don't know. Like, I guess it just, like the fact that he's kind of athletic, I guess, is slightly cooler than the opposite. Yeah, I mean, he is athletic, and he is smart. I mean, that's the point. He is smart, and I guess he doesn't have to be athletic for the story to work. From when he was a kid, he doesn't want to be a racist. It's something that's learned. Yeah. So he's like playing basketball because that's a sport like black people play, and this guy played it, and he's good at it. So it's like, why should he? That it's an indication of like, oh yeah, this guy
he should be able to just like play basketball, which is a sport, of course, which is dominated by African Americans, particularly in the NBA. So I think there is a point to it. But and in terms of Nazis liking this movie because the main character is cool, I mean, they must have only like seen like the first 20 minutes of it or whatever, because like the movie, like
it does get bummed, which isn't very cool.
I guess so, yeah. But I don't know how you could watch this whole movie. How could you watch this whole movie and then think, oh yeah, this guy, he's cool because he completely like rejects your ideology, like flat out. He just says fuck off, it's all bullshit, like numerous times. So yeah, again, maybe if you only watch the first 20 minutes, but then again, Nazis and right wingers in general are notorious for taking media properties which are meant to criticize them and just not caring about it, not caring about the message. Not caring about it and just like, oh yeah,
that's it, yeah.
So I mean, what are you gonna do? Like, this movie is as clear as it can be. Like, he's athletic and muscly or whatever, and like he spends time working out, which again isn't that, again, it's not necessary. But it's he's this true like hero among these neo-Nazis. So he's got to be like physically like
he has to be impressive. See,
yes.
The one thing I will say, because I have a thought about this, because one of the reasons why I mentioned it is because Lindsay Ellis of Lindsay Ellis fame once said, like, basically made that criticism of American History X that it's like makes him look kind of cool, and I think it was like it might have been in her video about Borat, but I'm not sure. Basically, whatever it is, she comes to the conclusion that like, no, the only way to defeat Nazis is to make them look silly. And I decided that I don't really agree with that criticism, because I think like actually the best way to, I think actually media about Nazis should take Nazis seriously, because if you like present Nazis as like a complete, that's it. So obviously, I suppose variety is the spice of life.
It just depends on what the story is about, because it's fine to portray him as like cool, because he then completely rejects Nazis, and that whole ideology throughout the rest of the movie. Like he says, it's bullshit time and time again. But if you make like Nazis just like, or a Nazi just the villain throughout the movie, and he doesn't go on a character arc, he doesn't change, and you make him cool, and look at how like good at basketball he is, or how smart he is, and there is no rejection of that ideology by this Nazi, then I agree that's probably bad. Because then Nazis can idolize him, but literally this character, he looks good, but he gives the middle finger to this ideology. And again, I think it's that the fact that he is looks so cool, and he's ripped and everything, if anything, that enhances the message, because this guy is like looked upon like it said numerous times in the movie by his fellow Nazis as a god. This guy can do whatever he wants, so he has to be very impressive. And the fact that this guy who's got it all going for him rejects this ideology, like he's like the perfect like skinhead, the perfect white supremacist, and he rejects that all. That again is, if anything, it emphasizes, the message that yes, you can de-radicalize, and even this guy, who shot 2 black people, has this massive tattoo, this massive Nazi tattoo, is like the head of this gang. Any Nazi would idolize him, I guess. He rejects all of that shit. So there you go. So I don't think Lindsay Ellis in this particular instance is correct. I'll say that. So what do you think?
No. So I kind of, again, I agree with the idea that it does depend on the movie and the point of the movie, and also like, the demographic. Like if you can predict that it's going to be a lot of normies who see the movie, which probably means like liberals, you've kind of got to maybe tailor the message. Whereas obviously if it was like an art film that you think is going to be seen by people who maybe think a little bit more kind of critically about media, you would hope you can maybe switch it up. So I think there's all sorts to consider, and to be honest, I don't think so. I would disagree with Lindsay Ellis, and I think pretty much you can have a movie like this, as long as you show the seriousness of the consequences. And at the end of the day, like if someone's going to be like, well, he did murder somebody, but he was pretty good at basketball, so it's pretty even. I don't know if there's much you can do to redress that.
Well, they'd see the murders as good things, So that wouldn't that would not that wouldn't take away from the fact that they idolize him. But again, I imagine what Lindsay Ellis would be right to criticize would be as an example, a Nazi who like is very smart, good looking, who is just the villain, and against the protagonist in whatever movie you want, like an action movie or like maybe not an action, but like a drama movie, and they're really cool, and like they're defeated at the end perhaps, but that doesn't really matter so much. But they never reject that ideology, and yeah, that again is not the case here at all. So we see in a previous flashback the same group of Crips that Derek had beaten in the basketball game earlier attempt to steal his truck. Derek murders them and curb stomps one. He is arrested and sentenced to 3 years in the California Institute for Men for Voluntary Manslaughter. Years earlier, Danny and Derek's father, a firefighter, was shot and killed by a black narcotics dealer while putting out a fire at their home. Immediately after his death, Derek erupts in a racially motivated tirade in a TV interview. So the thing is, this is interesting because we get flashbacks first, of course. This I think the structure is quite good in this movie because we have established, this is who Derek is before he comes out of prison. This guy's a massive racist and a Nazi, and of course he had these thoughts before his dad was killed. This is who he is, and it's an integral part of his character. And yeah, this guy, like we just said before. I said before, like he is the like the Nazi that everyone wants to be. Like he's smart, he's strong, he kills black, people who try to steal.
Nazi men want to be him, Nazi women want to be with him.
Exactly, yeah. So he's just this icon, I guess, in the Nazi community. So this is why this movie is impactful, because imagine if this Nazi icon was then de-radicalized. That's why this movie built him up to be like this god to these neo-Nazis who worship him. So returning home, Derek finds Danny emulated him, sporting a DOC tattoo and becoming a skinhead. Derek himself isn't a skinhead anymore, and of course he doesn't seem happy with the fact that his brother got a tattoo, and seems unhappy about Danny saying all the racist stuff to Seth and about black people and Jews. So it's interesting, and of course he says to him that he should listen to his black teacher, Mr. Sweeney, and that he doesn't want him to become like himself. And I think, that is quite intriguing, again, because we see this guy, he's the ultimate Nazi, and then once he gets out of prison, he's like a completely different guy. And just from a narrative perspective, that's intriguing, right? Wouldn't you say?
No, yeah, definitely. I think obviously, the character arcs, you got to have one, but I think that idea of the way that it moves around, and there is obviously a logic to it being non-linear.
Well, because it creates intrigue. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And obviously sometimes films are non-linear for annoying, pointless reasons. But yeah, in this case, it makes sense, and I think it does significantly improve the film compared to if it just played out. Yeah, if it just played out completely chronologically, it would be very different and not as emotionally impactful.
Yeah. So high-profile neo-Nazi Cameron Alexander becomes Derek's mentor, and they formed their own violent white supremacist gang called the Disciples of Christ in Venice Beach. A skilled basketball player, Derek defeats Crips members, winning control of the local courts, and then, of course, he organises an attack on Asian and supermarkets, employing blacks and immigrants. And, of course, these are all flashbacks that we see. And I just want to talk, by the way, okay, we're going to talk about Ed Norton right now, Michael. And, particularly, I thought about this when he was giving that speech outside the Korean-owned supermarket, or was it not Korean? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think he did say Korean, yeah.
Okay, so he gives this speech, right, about how, immigrants are coming across the border, how nobody looks out for the white man. I think
I think he's going to get fired as Home Secretary.
I think he can play the responsible brother type, but the question is, can he play a racist, like frothing at the mouth racist? I said racist twice.
Yeah, I don't know why. I think he has a very kind of nerdy voice. I know it's great. Or it's he's got a voice. I was thinking about it. I was like, he doesn't sound like I would imagine a racist sounding in a way. But I think again, it's not really his voice. But yeah, it's interesting that you seem to be. I guess I'm going to jump ahead and assume you're going to say that his ability to do that is a little bit suspect, because I kind of felt like it was a little bit
suspect.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, there are two sides to his performance. You have this, I'm a reformed Nazi, which I think he does very well. But then there's, he's an actual, full-on racist Nazi thug. And, of course, he was nominated for an Academy Award for his role. People say he was great in this movie, and I agree. Overall, he's very good. But I hear, again, his voice. You talked about his nerdy voice. He does have a nerdy voice. He does.
Yeah. He's like, I just can't believe these people are trying to destroy our town.
Yeah. And also, crucially, how eloquent and intelligent he seems. And I can't buy he'd just be like a skinhead, because that's one of the issues.
That's a good point. Yeah,
that's one of these issues I have with this movie. Honestly, people who are great students, and apparently he was very smart. They would just not fit in with these lower class neo-Nazis. What this guy is is a Reddit racist. Like,
Yes.
you can be an intelligent racist there. An intelligent racist is in, like, air quotes. But you can't be like a Nazi thug. I can't see this guy being a Nazi street thug with the way he talks and like what he actually says, how eloquent he is. He's just too eloquent. He's too informed. He brings up these statistics, and it's like, now this guy isn't the guy to, like rile up a bunch of impressionable young men.
Yeah, like I think if this movie was going to be both kind of more logical but also more interesting, I think in a way, it could be about. Like, because if, you have, like, Cam, who's kind of the guy who sees Edward Norton's potential, and Edward Norton becomes, like a Reddit racist or somebody who's basically offering legitimacy to the racist ideas by presenting them in, like, an intelligent way, rather than being the angry, let's go destroy a bunch of Koreans' livelihoods. And you could even have kind of the obvious logic that the rhetoric that he's presenting in a polite, friendly way is giving cover to the violence that's being done by the louts.
Yeah, I mean, again, you're talking about a very different movie there, obviously.
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
Yeah, it's like a very different movie, which would, of course, need a lot of rewriting. But yeah, I think in general, he's not quite believable. And again, this, I think, comes up for me again with the... when Derek invites Derek's mother, Doris, invites Murray, her boyfriend, her Jewish boyfriend, of course, to dinner, where an argument about Rodney King and the 92 LA riots ensues. Again, it's just a very Reddit argument. That's how I described it as. Like, they're having this argument at the dinner table, and, fucking Derek is bringing up these statistics about black people killing each other. And you're writing this back in 1998 or watching this back in 1998, and you think, oh, this is an interesting conversation, but, like, every fucking day on Twitter or Reddit now, you can find these type of arguments. And yeah, this guy, I just put down, he's a 4chan poster. That's what he is, and he's not a Nazi street thug. Now I see this guy for who he truly is, and like, he's quoting statistics and talking about how black people expressing their rage as a cop out, and he's doing it eloquently and in a Reddit way, basically defending the cops who defeated like Rodney King and saying, well, logically, like, they're the ones who should know how much force to use because they're trained professionals. Not saying, oh, they can do what they want or whatever. No, saying it in a more nuanced and seemingly intelligent way. And yeah, again, I think it's very reminiscent of what you saw on Twitter, or again Reddit, after the George Floyd killing. It felt very deja vu. It's some of the arguments you saw, which again we're in the minority, to be fair.
Oh, you had like Steven Crowder like doing the thing where like someone kneeled on his neck and he was okay. And it's just like, again, like, Steven Crowder's not going to go out and like,
yes, exactly,
rile up a bunch of rednecks or whatever the Californian equivalent to rednecks are.
No, Steven Crowder is not going to do that. And again, all these people who traffic in these like arguments, they're not like street thugs, like they may watch those videos, but and agree with like the point Crowder's making, but the people actually making those arguments and saying that, saying these arguments in an eloquent, kind of intelligent way, again, what they're saying is dumb or whatever, but they're speaking with statistics, and they seem informed somewhat, so okay, yeah, they seem to know kind of what they're talking about. And again, we saw that with George Floyd a lot, how conservatives want to own people who basically said that the George Floyd killing was a murder. No, we're gonna talk a lot about George Floyd's like drug history or whatever, and we're gonna talk about the fact that he was a felon, or the fact that it's a reasonable response from.
Also, apparently he was in a porno. Did you ever hear about that?
I did. Yes, I know. Isn't
that interesting?
It went to the front page of Pornhub the day he got murdered.
Okay.
People for leaving really nice comments, like.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, like rest in peace to this king.
R.I.P. King. I'm glad you enjoyed yourself, or whatever. That's the thing. These arguments that the George Floyd killing was justified and the Rodney King or beating, I don't know if he was killed, but was justified. They are in the minority, of course, thankfully, but you still heard them quite a bit. It just feels like, those kind of people are just so far away from, Nazi thugs, and so I just kind of don't find his performance believable. Yeah, I agree. So you don't find his performance that believable because of that, right?
No, definitely. I think it's possibly a combination of the writing and the the acting, because a lot of the writing, it feels like, I think this is a very difficult thing to pull off, because it feels like the kind of writing that would be written by someone who basically wants to write a Nazi to be, it almost feels like in my head they were preoccupied with being like, well, he has to have some kind of reason to be a Nazi, but he can't be too logical, because then it would be like, well, why does he stop being a Nazi? So they kind of like, in my head, I kind of felt like they had a bit of that tug of war going on between like, you can't just have him be like, well, I just hate black people for no reason.
No,
then
but
obviously,
that's they won't say that, but that's actually what
exactly,
a Nazi thug would think.
yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think personally, I think that Nazis are often quite dumb.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What
I'm
is
sorry,
it?
I don't want to like be
Well,
mean.
There's a, well, I think like Nazi, like I think they are all dumb, but there's different levels.
Yeah.
There's like, okay, you have this Nazi thug, which Norton apparently is portrayed to be. Okay, that is not somebody who would again like have these arguments at the dinner table and have these sophisticated like talking points. Again, that's a very how many times do I want to say this? That's a very Reddit thing, and those guys who argue on Reddit that it's okay to be racist, they are not going out and fucking up like Korean supermarkets. They are the last people to go and do that kind of shit. So yes, it's
even before the liberals. The liberals will be
Yes.
there doing it, and the sophisticated Nazis will be like, no, come on, guys, let's let's not. The optics are everything.
Yeah. So there is a contradiction there, and again, I feel some sympathy with Ed Norton because he's getting this dialogue, and he's like, well, I'm gonna have to seem intelligent because this is what I that's the character I'm playing. Everyone says I'm like a brilliant student, so I have to seem kind of intelligent, but I just don't find it believable. And of course the fact that his voice is nerdy doesn't help it either. So yeah, I think we've kind of criticized this. He should be dumber, basically. That would be better. He should be a dumber character and not so eloquent, and maybe not have such a nerdy voice. But I don't know if Ed Norton could change that a lot. But yeah. Anyway, so during a party at the DOC compound, Derek confronts Cameron for grooming his brother and calls him out for using him only to abandon him. Declaring his departure from the group, he brutally beats Cameron when he mocks him. Seth and the others turn against Derek. Again, because of the way the movie is structured, there is a natural intrigue in, how did this happen? Why is he beating this guy who was like his mentor? Why is he so against everything? Why is he calling everything bullshit? And I think, what did you say before about non-chronological storytelling? Like, it can be a bit bad sometimes.
Yeah.
But
Well, I say that because I've been watching this, like I said to you before we started, I've been watching the Star Wars TV shows, and a lot of those have completely pointless non-chronological storytelling.
yeah.
Like, there's no reason for it, but it's just there.
What about, what is one of those Star Wars stories that you've been watching?
So the Book of Boba Fett is a good example. Like, for some reason, it's just like they picked a completely random point in his life, and they just happen to have one part of it being picking up from a certain point, and then the other part of it is just like back. Yeah, there's no reason. Like, there's no logic to it at all.
That's the thing. If there is no reason, it just seems kind of hacky.
Yeah.
But if there is a reason, it can be a really smart move because, again, you're creating intrigue here. So I think it's a smart move in this movie. I like that they did it. It makes it seem better. Oh, sorry, it makes it seem better. The movie is better for it. Yes, that they did this. So Derek becomes disillusioned because of two things. So firstly, there's the prison gang politics. This is when he's in prison, of course. He disapproves of the gangs dealing with non-white gangs, believing they are using this philosophy of white supremacy out of convenience. He loses his belief further when his friends in the DOC never visit him in prison. He abandons the Aryan Brotherhood, who beat and rape him in the shower in retaliation. So, okay, why does Derek lose faith in this brotherhood? I guess because he thinks it's not real. Like, that they are not true believers, and there is actually no ideology that people believe in. And that's the thing, though. He kind of rejects the Aryan Brotherhood because he thinks he's the only true believer in this kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's an interesting route to go down that.
But does that make him like non-racist? I would say no.
No, yeah.
Okay.
It makes him more racist.
Yeah, and it is. Oh, exactly. Well, maybe, but he says he feels confused, and I get that. So he's feeling confused. Okay, but I just think what if the people in the Brotherhood were actually true believers? What then? Well, I guess he wouldn't be de-radicalized. Yeah. So that was very convenient for him that these Aryan Brotherhood members were only using white supremacy out of convenience. So convenient for him. But also, like, okay, so it's made him confused. Like, it's made him primed for de-radicalization, the fact that these guys aren't really Aryan Brotherhood, or don't believe in the tenets of National Socialism, I guess. They're not true believers. But what makes him non-racist, Michael? Well, it's his relationship with Laurent, I believe is his name. So, yeah, Laurent, he's this charismatic black guy. And this guy is needed for him to be fully de-radicalized, I guess. And, he learns that black people are treated harshly by cops, which for him is an eye opener, which I guess can happen. It's understandable, but if somebody's that far gone being a Nazi, would like really one story like that really change your worldview? Maybe not. But also, Laurent he's a funny guy. He makes him laugh.
Yeah.
He's like I said before, he's charismatic. And I guess that's all you need to convince him that this Nazi stuff is bullshit. Or he's a really charismatic, nice black guy, But of course, many Nazis don't really encounter someone like Laurent, do they? He was pretty fortunate that he came across like the maybe the only black guy in the prison who would actually like be nice to him and actually like would try to make him laugh and was actually like a really good guy, and wasn't in there for like murdering or raping.
I raped a white woman.
Yeah. Now, if you said that, but well, of course, there you fucking go. But he wasn't in the prison for raping a woman or a man.
Yeah.
Or
we should have put that as a plot hole, actually.
Or a nitpick,
Yeah, just that, why wasn't so I was being ironically racist. That was my joke, but I realized that it was such a racist thing to say that I couldn't get away with it even ironically. So I apologize.
So racist that I didn't even think of it,
I know, yeah.
That shows how non-racist I am.
You're right.
Yeah, so Laurent is in there not for murdering anyone or raping anyone, but because he stole a TV and it hit a police officer's foot when he dropped it. As he was getting arrested, and it's so fortunate that this massive racist met like the perfect black guy, just the perfect black guy.
Yeah, it's very convenient.
The perfect black guy in prison who could change his views on black people and make him non-racist. Some people like Laurent, of course, would exist in real life, but they would be incredibly rare and not something you can rely upon to like de-radicalize.
Yeah. Well, it's like the how in Driving Miss Daisy, like you've got all it takes is a black guy who's just gonna smile and be completely polite while you're like being incredibly racist to him. That's all it takes, guys.
Yeah. So again, it is not something you can rely upon. He just needs to meet the right person. Well, what if he doesn't meet the right person? What if Laurent had actually murdered like 3 people, like in a hit and run? What then? Well, I guess then he'd still be a Nazi.
Then racism would be his fault.
Yeah. What if Laurent had I don't know, like well, what if he wasn't funny? What if he fucking despised this guy, but because he killed 2 black people and he's a Nazi? What if he didn't show him any sympathy or empathy? What then? Well, he'd still be a Nazi.
So much for the tolerant left. That's what I'd say.
Again, so it's just like how he gets de-radicalized. I don't think is done very well because it relies so much on this character who, dare I say, there is an element of the magical Negro trope in Laurent. I mean, what do you think? Do you think that's going too far?
No, yeah, I agree. I think that yes, basically you're right. And of course that makes sense because the magical Negro thing can be seen with what's his face, Morgan Freeman as well. So, and that's obviously a comparison I already made, although I don't think this is quite that. Like, I feel like this guy kind of stands up for himself a bit, but yeah, he definitely stands up for himself in a way. Like, he obviously like kind of makes fun of the fact that he's a racist, but he makes fun of him in like a jovial way. So yeah, I would agree. Magical Negro, accurate. Yeah,
like it's not as bad as Morgan Freeman, and I guess I can imagine someone like this existing. But like it's super convenient that this guy meets him, of course. Yeah. So Dr. Sweeney rebukes Derek and reveals his own racist past, and warns that Danny has become involved with the DOC to follow in Derek's footsteps. Okay, what is the question that breaks Derek? What that Dr. Sweeney, aka Benjamin Sisko, asks? What is the question?
Oh, God, you know what? I'm struggling because I know it. What is like? Doesn't he just say, sorry, I might be completely misremembering, and if so, I'm actually going to really embarrass myself, but doesn't he just say, like, if you're, like, are you sure that you're right? Am I crazy, or is that what he says?
Well, he says, have you done anything to make your life better?
Oh, that's it. Yes.
Yes. And, of course, the answer is no, he hasn't. But if he was such a Nazi, he'd say, well, yeah, but that's because of the Jews,
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, that's the thing. It's like, the obvious answer to us watching, to the normal liberal audience is, well, no, he hasn't. And if he's, like, a sane normal person, he'll realize, oh yeah, I've been going down the wrong path. But he's not a sane normal, but like he's a Nazi. So
yeah, I was kind of thinking that, like, yeah, basically, I don't know, like, yeah, like that's the thing. Obviously they know they're angry, but I like this idea that because obviously I think it's fair to say being a Nazi is kind of destructive tendency. I don't want to sound too judgmental, but I'd say that. And I feel like such a person, you can't just point out that, like, hey, this doesn't really make much sense in terms of improving your life. And I'm like, oh, geez, I never thought of it like that.
Yeah, his response would be, well, yeah, nothing I have done has made my life better because, like, the world is out to get the white man, The world is out to punish white men, and that it's the fault of the Jews. They're trying to help black people. Black people in affirmative action, etc. They get helped while white men don't get any help. So it's no real surprise that I'm here. That's what they want to do to white people.
Yeah.
That would be a response I would expect from a Nazi, not just breaking down and crying. And being like, oh yeah, black professor, you're right. I shouldn't be a racist. I just don't find that, again, believable. How the de-radicalization process, I think, has a lot of holes, essentially, in this movie. So when he's
there's one very significant hole involved in the de-radicalization process.
That's good. That's very clever. Well done. So when he is released, Derek thanks Lamont, whom he realizes intervened on his behalf to stop him getting killed by the black prisoners. Again, thank God for this guy, Laurent. Actually, it's not Laurent, it's Lamont. My bad. Actually, the black vampire from Twilight is called Laurent. I think this guy is Lamont, okay?
That's interesting. That's interesting that they're so similar.
Yeah, I know. So anytime I've said Laurent, just think Lamont, and that would be accurate. Right, okay. So Mick LaSalle felt that while it succeeded in portraying Derek's descent into neo-Nazism, it failed to portray his renouncement of his past beliefs. We had to watch him think his way in. We should see him think his way out. And that's true. We see how, I guess, he could change, but we don't really see his character actually say anything, His character doesn't, espouse, his non-racist beliefs, and how his beliefs have changed into being...
Yeah, there's no point where he, totally owns some racist with facts and logic.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't ask for that. You don't need to go that far, but you just need to, show a little bit, have some scene where he talks to Lamont about, how wrong he was, because there's this 4-month period, I think, after he rejects the Aryan Brotherhood, and he thinks he's going to get killed, and then it's just, a montage of him doing shit, and then he gets released. You could have a scene in that period where he, really acknowledges, the journey he has been on and the path he is now on. That would be fine. I think that would make the movie better and help to understand this guy a bit more. But that is not done. So afterwards, Derek tells Danny about his experience in prison, which seems to prompt a change in Danny. The pair return home and remove racist posters from their bedroom. The next morning, Danny completes his paper, reflecting on his reasons for adopting neo-Nazi values from Derek, who most likely adopted such views from their father. In a flashback at the dinner, showing racial views, particularly against Dr. Sweeney, that flashback at the end with his racist dad at the dinner table, it's kind of meant to be like oh wow, look at that moment,
Yeah.
But again, it's not really that surprising,
Yeah, I was thinking that too. I think I wrote down what's the significance of the dad scene, because it really does just seem like it is as simple as, wow, it turns out that this movie about how racism can be spread between family members, it can be spread between family members other than just brothers.
Yeah.
Shocking.
Yeah, and of course, it's not shocking, but the key thing is the movie, it feels like it wants to be shocking. It wants to be such an impactful moment. This is where he got his racist views from. Wow. And again, it's not surprising because that's the point you've been making throughout the movie. And again, even if you hadn't been making that point, would it be that crazy that his dad is the one that taught him all these racist things? No. So again, I don't think that scene, given that you have the narration of Daniel before that scene, and that implies the scene's significance. It's like, well, how did this all start? Well, I guess it was because of this. And then we see it and we're going to go, oh, that's how it happened. Wow. Yeah. So again, that scene, you can have that scene in the movie, you just can't place that significance on it. Maybe move it earlier on in the movie, or don't have such a seemingly dramatic setup, which I think this movie did deploy. So Roger Ebert gave the film 3 out of 4 stars, but was critical of the underdeveloped areas, stating, the movie never convincingly charts Derek's path to race hatred. Ebert concluded, this is a good and powerful film. If I am dissatisfied, it is because it contains the promise of being more than it is. And I think that's true. I think it can...
That's a pretty good way of putting it.
Yeah, it could be more than it is, right? I think there are holes, like we said, in this movie. And if those holes were filled, don't think about the shower scene.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then it would be better, right? This movie has potential to be really good instead of just good. Would you say that's the case?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I think a honest exploration of racism as an issue is definitely fertile ground for a lot of really interesting points, both in terms of character and emotion, but also thematic insight. And in that sense, this movie kind of underperforms.
Yeah, no, that's true. And also, Owen Gleiberman thought the script was a bit thin, which I think goes to the point we've been making. Derek walks Danny to school, and of course Sweeney then says, hey, Seth and Cameron were attacked last night and are in a ICU, and Derek denies having any knowledge of what happens. And then in the boys' bathroom, Danny is killed by a black student he had confronted the day before. Derek runs to the school and, finding Danny's body, cradles him while blaming himself for influencing Danny's views and actions. In a voiceover, Danny reads the final lines of his paper from Dr. Sweeney, quoting the final stanza of Abraham Lincoln's first inaugural address. Yes, so hate kills and makes everyone's life worse off. It is a very liberal ending, this, Michael.
Yes.
And I'm not sure, what's he called? Daniel dying was that satisfying an ending, honestly. I thought, well, it's a bit over the top. Like, how often do you hear of, fucking a black kid shooting a white kid at school?
Yeah, I was thinking that,
it's just a kind of a really over the top ending. I think if Derek had gotten killed somehow, by a black gang, or maybe, the Nazis, they turned on Derek and fucking killed him after he turned on them, that would be a lot better. And I think you can still have the kind of the same ending with, Daniel reading, his fucking paper and the final quote from Abraham Lincoln. But yeah, overall, again, that's not really my major criticism of the ending. It is just a very kind of liberal ending of we should stop hating everybody, right? What would you say?
No, yeah, I mean, to be fair, I would say we should stop hating everybody, but yeah, I don't think that's a particularly powerful point for a movie to be making. And it's certainly not it's just not insightful. It kind of reminds me, remember with the whole Donald Trump thing, everyone's like, love trumps hate, which is also a hilarious sentence because it implies that it literally sounds like loving trumps hate. Oh, so you love Trump's hate? But yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Also, I just want to say, what Michael O'Sullivan said, I'll repeat his quote. There are moments when Anne Dudley's string-laden score overpowers the simplicity of the film's message, and other times where the moral of brotherly love is hammered a bit heavily. Yes, and especially at the end. That's the thing, it's not just this ending is unsatisfying, really, and it has, just a very simplistic message that it's making at the end. It's really hammered home as well. To such a massive degree, and it's just not necessary. So yeah, the ending again is quite bad. So yeah, this movie has potential, but it just unfortunately does not live up to what it could have been. So yeah, do you want to conclude, Michael?
Yeah, I would. So overall, yeah, like I say, this movie, I started off by saying it doesn't really have anything that insightful to say about racism, and I do think that is an issue. And definitely the criticism of it kind of being liberal, hey, just love each other, man. Obviously, it's not a particularly sophisticated conclusion. So, if you want to try and find the good in this movie, you'd have to try and find it in the performance and the emotional resonance. And even then, there are a few issues. Obviously, already as we mentioned, Edward Norton's specific performance as this character isn't that believable, and the emotional resonance of the ending kind of just feels like the movie wanted something significant to happen, but you just the movie's supposed to look, it's a tragedy. Which all in all, I'm going to give it a low 7, and we've been quite critical of it. The thing is, I still think it gets a 7 because I still think this film, artistically it's quite interesting, and there are some interesting characters, and most of the performance is actually quite good. There's just some scenes where it's a bit I don't really know if I buy Edward Norton as that specific character, but when he's being the character who it logically makes sense for him to be, that makes more sense. So yeah, overall, low 7, I think that's reasonable.
Yeah, I've also given it a 7 out of 10. I was debating 7 or 7.5. I'm I think a 7, because ultimately I do think that this movie it's a fine movie. It's good. It could be very good. Again, Ed Norton, I think he could have been a bit more believable. Even though I think he's decent, he's not incredible as some people may have suggested. And yeah, in general, the plot has a few holes and the ending is unsatisfying in numerous ways. So yeah, again, it's a shame because I think this could have been really, really good, but in the end, it's just good. So Michael, what are we reviewing next week?
Next week, well, obviously one of the things in this movie is that love is the important thing. We just got to love each other. Well, guess what, Luke? Next week we're reviewing the opposite movie to this, Love Actually.
Yeah, we will be reviewing Love, actually. And maybe that is what, Dr. Sweeney should have said to to Ed Norton. It's hey, you've got so much hate in your heart, but do you know what you need? Love, actually. And that would have made everything better. So yeah, join us in a couple of weeks for Love Actually. Michael, who have you been?
I've been Michael.
I've been Luke. Thanks for listening to our review of American History X, and goodbye.
Goodbye.